Then on Sports Central, we'll be going over our next schedule preview this offseason, and it will be over the Stanford Cardinal. And this is a team that went 4-8 in the 2019 season. And yeah, I mean, Stanford, this is definitely a down year compared to how they've been in the past, but how will they do in 2020 is what we're going over here today. We'll be going over a few players that this team will be losing, who they're going to be returning, and also going over their schedule for the first time this offseason. Starting off the games that Stanford has had since November. We start on November 9th when they played Colorado in Boulder. That was a loss there, 13-16. But as you can tell, I mean, two of these losses here in their last month of action between Colorado and California, I mean, they were really close games. So this Stanford team certainly could have made it to a bowl game this season. It just came down to those two really close games. But yeah, they also had a couple of really bad ones against Washington State. That'd be a big example of that. They lost to them on the road 22-49. They also lost to Notre Dame 24-45. So yeah, Notre Dame certainly was a team the last season that was they were pretty good. They were in the top 25 for the majority of the season. So yeah, overall that wasn't all that terrible of a loss, but definitely if they could have beaten at least Colorado or California, yeah, Stanford could have easily been on their way to a bowl game this season. But yeah, it just kind of turns out that way sometimes. Between September and October they were 4-4. Then between November and the rest of the season they were 0-4. So they were winless throughout their last month of action last season. Moving into returning production for Stanford, they returned their top quarterback Davis Mills, which he had a decent season. He had just right around 2,000 yards last year with 11 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So yeah, overall yardage-wise, he was a great quarterback, and I expect him to probably be the main starter going into 2020. They do lose their second quarterback, KJ Costello. He is transferring away. And yeah, he had just over 1,000 yards last season with 6 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So yeah, both of those quarterbacks split action last season, and yeah, both of them did halfway decent as well. They lose their top running back in Cameron Scarlett, which he was a great player for this team, probably the best one on the offense. He had just over 1,000 yards with 7 touchdowns. So yeah, that's going to be a really tough loss there of Cameron Scarlett. And they also returned their top receiver in Michael Wilson, which is going to be huge. He had just right over 670 yards with 5 touchdowns. And they do lose their tight end, or their top tight end / second receiver in Colby Parkinson, which of course he had just right around 600 yards. I think he's going to have a great career in the NFL. He was a great tight end last season, one of the better ones in the Pac-12. They returned their second receiver in Simi Fehoko, which he had just right around 600 yards with 6 touchdowns as well. So yeah, it's good that they return their 3 main receivers between Michael Wilson, Simi, and also their third wide receiver in Connor Weddington, as he had just right over 530 yards last season too. So yeah, those 3 receivers I bet will be very good going into next season. I wouldn't be surprised to see all 3 of them put up over 2,000 yards combined next season. But yeah, as far as the offensive line goes, they do lose 3 on the offensive line, so that's going to be really tough to deal with. That's definitely going to be the main part on the offense that I'm very uncertain about. They also lose 2 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, and 2 in the secondary. So yeah, considering Stanford went 4-8 last season, it surprises me a ton that they're losing as much talent as they are. I mean, they're losing 5 starters on that defense. That's going to be very tough to deal with. And typically out of most defenses, you'll see 3 to 4 losses, or starter-wise, and for Stanford, they're losing 5. So yeah, that does concern me a little bit there. For Stanford to lose 5 in their defense, especially since, I mean, they didn't have a very good defense last season in general. So yeah, that brings up the question, chances of a bowl season for Stanford, and it's really tough to say it right now. I think the chances for Stanford are, I think they're slim. I think there's a chance, but I think it's just going to be it's going to be a tough go at it if Stanford's going to make it to a bowl game, which that is going to be next. Let's look at your schedule for Stanford. You start off the season on September 5th against William and Mary at home. Then on the 12th, you got Arizona on the road. You got USC and UCLA to finish off September. Then in October, you got Notre Dame again, this time on the road. Then you got Washington State at home on the 17th, followed by Oregon and Oregon State between the 24th and the 30th. And then in November, you got Washington on the road in Seattle. Then you got on the 14th, Colorado at home. Then you got California on the road. And then you finish off the season against BYU also at home. So, you know, overall for Stanford, I mean, this schedule isn't all that terrible. Definitely a few winnable games for sure, but your main guaranteed wins will be the top and the bottom ones, your first and your last games of the regular season. The first one being against William and Mary, and then BYU being the other one. I just consider, I mean, both of those games are at home against pretty mediocre teams, so I do expect Stanford to get those 2 wins. But other than that, I mean, at Arizona, that could be a very winnable game there. I mean, UCLA should be very winnable as well. I mean, you also got a couple other games like Colorado. That's definitely winnable. California is too. So your main month of action is going to be in October, though. That's going to be a brutal month for Stanford. Once again, you got Notre Dame to start off with on the road. That's going to be very tough in general. And then Washington State, of course, they've been kind of an up-and-down team, so who knows how good they're going to be. And then Oregon and Oregon State, both teams of which I expect to be very good next season, especially Oregon. I expect them to actually win the Pac-12 once again next year right now. And then Oregon State, of course, I mean, I expect them to make it to a bowl game next season. So for Stanford, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a tougher schedule, especially in October. So you got to watch out for that month. But yeah, other than that, your record estimation will be 4-8 to 6-6 for Stanford. Basically what that's telling you is that I think there's a 1-3 chance that they'll make a bowl game next year once again. Just with how many losses that they're having, it's just really tough to say right now. I mean, this was a team that had a lot of close games last season. I mean, Stanford could have easily, they were that close to getting 6 wins and going to a bowl game. I mean, once again, just in that November in general, they could have gotten a couple of big wins there, and they could have been easily onto a bowl game. So for Stanford, I mean, that's just how some seasons are. But yeah, I mean, that was a tough season for Stanford to have to finish off 4-8. Definitely something that is very unlike them. I mean, they've been very successful over the past decade. So yeah, that was pretty crazy to see. But yeah, once again, for Stanford, record estimation 4-8 to 6-6. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team. Also, let me know whether you disagree with anything in here. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on that in the comments below. But yeah, thanks all for watching. If you enjoyed this schedule preview, be sure to slap a like on it, subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel, and I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, once again, thanks all for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I will see you all later.